Hi, my name is Nobody James and this is my Eldlich Doom King deck profile. In this deck we have a lot of opportunity to play out of the grave, control our opponents, and have a lot of fun. Now this deck isn't strictly meta, but it can definitely hold its own in a brawl. Now why don't we get into the deck list? Let's get into the actual deck. So, first off we have 2 copies of Eldlich the Golden Lord. His special ability earns him 2 spots in this deck. Eldlich can send himself plus 1 spell or trap to the grave in order to send 1 card on the board to the grave. The really nice thing about this effect is that it says send, so cards that can't be destroyed by battle, or by card effect, are simply gotten rid of. But his other ability is nothing to scoff at either. Eldlich can send 1 spell or trap on the field to the grave in order to add him back to your hand in order to special summon him, or any zombie from your hand. That monster will also gain 1000 attack and defense and can't be destroyed by card effects until the end of the next turn. The power boost also goes with that. I do have to mention as a disclaimer that these cards here are proxies, so you can't really play this deck in a tournament, but I just didn't want to spend $125 on 2 cards. After our Eldlich comes my personal favorite zombie, Doom King Balladrock. Balladrock has 2800 attack points and 2000 defense. As well, Balladrock can special summon himself during either player's standby phase, provided there's a field spell active, which in this deck there almost always is. Doom King can also negate the effect of a zombie once per chain, or banish a monster on the field if the zombie's effect activates. That means Doom King is in total a walking 2 interruptions. That's a big scary thing, especially for a monster that can keep coming back. Love him. After our Doom King we have another of my personal favorites, Vampire Fraulein. Fraulein can special summon herself if an attack is declared. As well, if a battle involving a zombie is active, Fraulein can pay life points in increments of 100 to a maximum of 3000 to give your zombie monster additional pointage. Now, imagine just sacrificing 3000 life points in order to make Fraulein a 5000 defense point monster. That's a wall that almost no one can get over. However, she does have her drawbacks, namely the life loss. You can only do so much before Fraulein becomes a little ineffective, but she's an excellent wall to start off. After Fraulein, we're going to be playing 1 copy of Jacobolin. Jacobolin is a utility card. Usually you'll special summon him out during your opponent's turn in case your opponent is playing out of their grave too much. Or if you have a specific couple zombies in your hand that you really want in your grave, you can use Jacobolin's effect to discard them in order to special summon Jacobolin. Other than that, Jacobolin really isn't anything too powerful. He is a level 7, which is very helpful for later on synchro plays if you plan on going into level 8s or even level 10s. Next up, we're playing 2 copies of Necro World Banshee. Banshee is a fabulous card, and usually you'll only see her played at 1, however I like her at 2. Because on board, she is a field barrier, meaning you can't get rid of the field spell, because while she's on the board, she prevents zombie worlds from being destroyed. As well, she can quick effect herself, so she can banish herself from the field or grave in order to play a zombie world from your deck or add that zombie world to your hand. That is an excellent effect, and her stats aren't bad either. As well, she's a level 4, which means easier rank 4 Xyz summoning or even synchro summoning. She's also excellent for link material, because she can play out of the graveyard. After that, we're running 1 copy of Gozuki. This is almost a staple card in any zombie deck, because Gozuki is essentially a foolish burial for any zombie monster. As well, if he's sent to the grave, you can banish another zombie that isn't Gozuki to summon a zombie from your hand that also isn't Gozuki. That's a really helpful effect in case you have one of your high-level zombies in your hand and you have no way to get them onto the board. Plus, his stats are also really nice, being only 100 points lower than your Necroworld Banshee, and also a level 4. Gozuki is an excellent choice. After that, we're running 3 staple cards. They're named Mezuki. These cards are absolutely essential in any zombie deck because Mezukis allow you to banish them in order to special summon 1 zombie monster from your grave. So, if you happen to Foolish Burial or Gozuki, or even a monster that we'll talk about in just a second, and use those effects, you can simply banish Mizuki in order to special summon those zombies back. And with a couple of the cards in our deck, we can easily get Mizuki into the grave. Plus, as a simple 1700 point attack point monster, is a pretty good thing. As well, he's also a level 4, which you'll notice a lot of in this deck. Beyond that, we're going to be running another 3 staple cards, 3 copies of Shiranui Solitaire, as well, 3 copies of Unizombie. Shiranui Solitaire is a spectacular way to go into your Unizombie or another monster that we'll talk about in a little bit. Shiranui can tribute himself or any zombie monster in order to special summon one zombie tuner with 0 defense from your deck. Unizombie, you'll notice, is a 0 defense point monster, which means you can tribute Shiranui Solitaire in order to special summon Unizombie. Unizombie is essentially the best play starter in your entire deck because he's a discard effect to increase a monster's level, and B, a send from deck to grave effect in order to increase a monster's level. Both of these effects are incredibly useful for furthering your plays in a zombie deck, and you get to increase zombies' level, which means easier synchro play, or even Xyz. After that, you're going to be playing 2 copies of Glow Up Bloom. This is a personal choice. I like Glow Up Bloom at 2 because you can tech out specific cards that you require. Specifically, if you have a need for a Doom King right off the bat, then you can go for Doom King. Or you can grab out a zombie or anything high level. These are just useful cards, especially when one of the cards in our extra deck that allows us to link off and make 2 monsters on our board. After that, the last couple cards in our monster lineup are 2 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Usually you'd see this card at 3, however I like it at 2, because Ash Blossom is not integral to the deck strategy, because we have a lot of negate ability already. And with cards that we'll get to later on in the list, you'll see even more negate and destroy and stopping power. So, Ash Blossom is a typical hand trap, allowing you to prevent your opponent from adding cards to their hand, sending cards to the grave, or even, I forget their third effect, special summoning from their deck, of course, which is why Ash Blossom is one of the best, if not the best, hand traps in the entire game. After that, another personal choice I'm playing is 3 copies of Zombie World. I like it at 3 because in my circles, there's a lot of spell trap removal, which is also why I played Necroworld Banshee at 2. So, with Zombie World, it changes all monsters on the field into zombies. As well, neither player can tribute a monster that isn't a zombie for a tribute summon. This card can be very detrimental to machine decks, or decks that focus on having one specific type. That's why I like Zombie World. It's a very good field spell, especially for the deck we play. After that, we're going into the Eldlich cards. We're going to play 2 copies of Cursed Eldland. Now, this is another personal choice. Most players would play this at 3, however, I like it at 2, because, again, it's not integral to the strategy. But if you open with your Cursed Eldland, it's the perfect opportunity for a bait. However, Cursed Eldland does have its minor drawback of not being allowed to not allowing you to attack with monsters that aren't zombies. Cursed Eldland's ability allows you to pay 800 life points in order to add to your hand 1 Eldlich monster or 1 Golden Land spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. As well, if Cursed Eldland is sent to the grave in any facet, you're allowed to send 1 Golden Land card from the deck to the grave as well. That's helpful for later plays. I'll explain in a bit. We're going to be playing 3 copies of one of our favorite spells. It's called Elixir of Black Awakening. Elixir of Black Awakening is a staple card in an Eldlich deck because it lets you special summon 1 zombie monster from your deck. It has to be in defense position, but that's alright. But if you control no Eldlich monsters, Black Awakening is forced to special summon 1 Eldlich monster. As well, during the end of the turn, you can banish this card in order to set 1 Golden Land card, but you can't activate the special summon effect and the send effect in the same turn. So, you'll have to wait till your next turn after activating Black Awakening to use its secondary effect. Another Eldlixir that we play is Eldlixir of White Destiny. This one we play at 2, because it lets us special summon a zombie from our hand or graveyard, which is very helpful if we Foolish Burial a card into our grave and then special summon it back with White Destiny. As well, it has the same ruling as all the other Eldlixirs. If we do not control an Eldlich, then we cannot summon anything that isn't an Eldlich. So, it does have its drawbacks, but this one does not force our monsters into defense position. However, it is a little more limited than our Black Awakening. And it has the same search effect as our Black Awakening, which is really helpful for consistency matters in our deck. As well, it's a quick play, so that's very helpful as well. Next, we're going to be playing another quick play spell, 2 copies of Super Polymerization. This is one of our deck's best control cards. It lets us fuse monsters from either player's field in order to fusion summon a monster. And all we need do is discard a card, which in this deck is never a bad thing. With Zombie World, we can change all of our opponent's monsters into zombies, meaning that we can further our own fusion plays in order to get rid of cards on their board and stack ours to an unbeatable position, sorry. After that, we're going to be playing another 2 staple cards in almost every meta-tier deck, 1 for 1 and Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial is a very simple spell that allows us to send 1 card from our deck to the grave, as long as it's a monster, which is really helpful for getting a Meziki, or a Glow-Up Bloom, or even a Goziki, or a Banshee into our grave. That lets us further our plays. 1 for 1 is very similar in the effect. It lets us discard a card in order to special summon 1 level 1 monster from our deck, which is going to get us our Glow-Up Bloom, which means easy link fodder, or even synchro material. Plus we get to get a card out of our hands, which is never a bad thing in this deck. Moving on to the traps, we have 3 copies of Eldlixir of Scarlet Sanguine. Eldlixir of Scarlet Sanguine is my personal favorite Eldlixir. It lets you special summon a zombie from your deck or your grave. That is the most utilitous card in the entire deck. But it still does have the drawback of preventing you from summoning anything that isn't an Eldlich monster if you do not control an Eldlich monster. But in this deck, there's so many ways to get an Eldlich monster onto your board that effect is almost moot. As well, it has the same search effect as all the other Eldlixir cards, and most of the Golden Land cards as well. However, this is a card that I think should be an absolute must-have of 3. Moving on again, we're going to be playing 3 copies of an Omni Negate trap called Golden Land Forever. Omni Negate just refers to monster spell and trap negation. And all you need to do for this is have an Eldlich monster on your board and send 1 zombie on your board to the grave, which is never a bad situation, especially if you have a Doom King that you've exhausted both of his effects. Then you can Golden Land Forever and tribute that Doom King in order to negate another card. Really helpful. This is one of the few cards of the spell and trap lineup that doesn't actually banish itself in order to set another card. However, we're going to go to the home stretch now. We're playing 2 copies of Hequirio of the Golden Land. Hequirio allows us to special summon him as a trap monster. As well, if I control an Eldlich monster, that allows us to banish a card from our opponent's grave. That's helpful in case our opponent is playing too heavily out of their graveyard, and minimize the damage that we take. Hequirio also can banish himself from the grave in order to set an Eldlixir card. So the way it works with the Eldlixirs and the Golden Lands is the Golden Lands set the Eldlixirs and vice versa. So the Eldlixirs will set the Golden Lands. So it's an eternal loop situation, just not on the same turn. Next, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Conquistador of the Golden Land. Conquistador is a really nice and useful card because Conquistador lets us special summon him as a trap monster as well. If we control an Eldlich monster, we're able to destroy 1 face-up card on the board. It's a nice damage control card, so we can stop our opponent from getting too heavy too quickly. As well, both Conquistador and Hequirio are level 5s, meaning easier synchro and link plays. Plus, Conquistador also has the same effect of Hequirio, being able to banish himself in order to set an Eldlixir. For the final two cards in the deck, we're playing two copies of Solemn Strike. Solemn Strike is a negate for a monster effect or a normal summon, which is a really helpful effect. It allows us to pay 1500 points, which is possibly the only downside, but in this game as well as almost every other card game, life points are a utility. So, from there, let's move on to the extra deck. The extra deck is a lot of personal choice, and it's not necessarily meta, but I think it can still hold its own. We're playing one copy of Link Karibo. This lets us get our Glow Up Bloom off the board quickly and link off to make a damaged effect negation. So, Link Karibo contribute himself when my opponent monster declares an attack in order to lower the opponent's monster's attack to 0. He can also quick effect himself from the grave back to your field by tributing one level 1 monster. We also play two copies of Vampire Sucker. Vampire Sucker is almost essential to a zombie deck, especially one that plays Doom King, because Vampire Sucker allows you to draw one card every time a zombie is special summoned from the grave. This effect is a once per turn though. As well, you can tribute your opponent's monsters to tribute summon your own zombies. And another really good thing about Vampire Sucker is she can forcibly special summon one zombie monster from your opponent's grave to their field, which means another draw. There's nothing bad about Vampire Sucker. She just simply requires two zombie monsters, and in this deck there's nothing that is not a zombie. A personal choice is Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos. Blackluster Soldier is a 3000 point Link 3 beat stick, requiring 3 monsters with different names. And if you use a level 7 or higher zombie, or level 7 or higher monster, Blackluster Soldier can't be destroyed by card effects, which is really helpful. As well, every time he destroys an opponent's monster, he gets one of the following effects. He can either gain 1500 points, he can make an additional attack during the next turn, or he's able to banish a card on the board, which is one really useful card, all wrapped in one. Next, I play Yoki Onna, the Absolute Zero Maya Kashi. Yoki Onna is a really useful card allowing you to further manipulate your grave. Yoki Onna, every time a zombie monster is special summoned from the grave, you can zero out one monster on the field's attack and negate their effects. That effect can be used twice per turn. As well, Yoki Onna negates the effects of opponent's banished monsters. So, that's a really helpful effect. We also play Borolo Dragon. I would play Boral Sword Dragon in this deck, but that is currently in my Altergeist deck, which I might be profiling in a bit. Borreload is just a stand-in for Boral Sword, so I'm not going to really explain him too much. Moving on to Fusion, we're playing two copies of Draco Necro Nether Soul Dragon. This is our super polymerization target. With this card, it simply requires two zombie monsters, and he's a level 8, 3000 attack point monster. And with his whole deal of being able to stop the destruction of a monster, he doesn't destroy monsters, but he zeroes out their points, and then special summons a zombie token, well, a Nether Soul token, who's able to very effectively wipe out your opponent's monster, dealing even more damage. Plus, he's easily gotten back with things like Meziki, or even resurrection spells, like our Elixirs. Moving to Synchro, we have a couple level 7s. We've got Cyber's Quantum Dragon and Red Eye Zombie Necro Dragon. Red Eye Zombie Necro Dragon is one of my personal favorite Synchro monsters, because it gains 100 attack and defense for every zombie in the grave or on the field. And with that, you get to count up both yours and your opponent's, which is helpful, because Red Eye Zombie Necro Dragon can get very big very quickly. As well, Zombie Necro Dragon, when he destroys a zombie monster, when a zombie is destroyed, your Zombie Necro Dragon can easily summon one zombie from the grave. That's a super effect, especially if you have something like your Froline or your Jacobolin in the grave. You can get them right back. After that, Cyber's Quantum Dragon is a really useful card as well. He allows you to bounce cards up to twice, which is really helpful in case your opponent's board is looking really scary. Plus, being a 2500 point monster is very nice as well. Then, moving on to our last synchro monster, we're playing another very useful zombie card, Psyframe Lord Omega. This is almost an honorary zombie because it's played in almost every zombie deck that I've seen. Psyframe Lord Omega is pure utility, because during the standby phase of your opponent's turn, you're allowed to target one banished monster and return that card to the grave, which means you can play with your Necroworld Banshee, or with your Glow Up Bloom or a Mezuki for the following turn. As well, Sideframe Lord Omega can banish himself from the field in order to target a card in your opponent's hand and banish that card as well. They'll both come back during the start of my next turn, which is really helpful. Psyframe Lord Omega is absolute A+. After that, we're playing a copy of Abyss Dweller. Abyss Dweller is a lovely rank 4 Xyz monster. We don't really mind his attack gain effect because we don't use water monsters in the deck. But what we do care about is his detach effect. Abyss Dweller allows us to detach an overlay unit in order to shut off our opponent's grave, essentially. It's a perfect card to slow down our opponent from playing, especially in meta tier, because most meta tier players like to play out of the grave. And it's also a zombie hate card, because we can stop our opponent from using zombies. This is another of my personal choices, number 22 Zombiestein. He's mainly an attack point monster, just because he's a 4500 point beatstick, which is really lovely. But his effect also lets us negate an opponent's monster effect by detaching an overlay unit, tributing a zombie, and switching Zombiestein to defense. I'd only use this effect as a last resort, however, because that's losing a lot of value, and possibly losing your big strong monster. From there, we're moving to Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max. This is part of a combo using Eldlich and Doom King, and Unizombie to increase Doom King's level. Then you can overlay and make Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max. Detach Doom King and then deal 2,000 points of effect damage. Plus, he's a 3,000 point monster, so that's a really helpful effect as well. With that, we also run another proxy card, a monster by the name of Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Juggernaut Lieb. Juggernaut Lieb has a lot of very useful effects, however I can't remember them all currently, so I'll do my best to try and remember. Juggernaut Lieb allows you to, once per turn, detach an overlay unit to increase her attack and defense by 2,000 points, which means as a starting point monster of 4,000 each, she can become a 6,000 point beatstick. However, when you use that effect, no other monsters on the field can attack during that turn. But she also gains an additional attack for every overlay unit on her, +1. So, she can become very big, very scary, and very powerful. Well, that's all my deck profile is. I apologize for the low quality and for the issues, but this is the first video I've been posted, so I'm hoping that I don't get judged too harshly. Thanks so much, and bye-bye.